Usually on this channel we focus on the positive of books and movies and shows that we love, but today I am going against the grain and talking about the 8 most agonizing chapters in the Harry Potter books. Now I want to start by saying this. I only struggled to get through one chapter of Harry Potter. My number 1 on the list is very personal and I will explain at length when I get there, but the rest of these are kind of the worst of the best. I truly think every single chapter of this book is an adventure and it's fantastic fun. But a lot of fans consider these chapters to be some of the worst. And for me, these are the worst of the best chapters of Harry Potter. Let's start at number 8, the House Elf Liberation Front. This is in Goblet of Fire, chapter 21, and is a chapter where we get a surprise party for Harry, where Harry opens the egg and Hermione discovers how to get into the kitchens. In Care of Magical Creatures, the Blast-Ended Scroots rebel against hibernation. Rita arranges an interview with Hagrid, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione go to the kitchens where they find Dobby and Winky. To be honest, I think the reason this chapter can be tough for fans is that there are a lot of chapters between the first and the second task. And this is just one that seems to go on tangents that don't seem at all relevant to the plot. Some readers, myself included, love this kind of stuff, but even I was a bit bored by the Blast-Ended Scroots. Number 7, Hagrid's Tale. This is in Order of the Phoenix, chapter 20. And in this chapter, Rowling is trying to build out the wizarding world a little bit, which I, again, love, but a lot of other fans found this chapter to be a bit of a distraction. It's a chapter in which Hagrid returns and tells the story of his journey with Madame Maxine to the land of the giants, where they were unsuccessful in gaining an alliance. It's essentially a chapter about a whole lot of nothing, and unfortunately the giants never really pan out to be that integral to the plot or even joining of Voldemort's army. So the whole deviation in telling of the story where Hagrid went, while necessary for readers to know kind of where he was, just doesn't seem to go anywhere. So it's a bit of a distraction as well. Number 6, The Worst Birthday, Chamber of Secrets, chapter 1. Any chapter with the Dursleys are brutal, but this one is extra brutal because it's a chapter that gives us a recap of what happened to Harry during his first year. Come on, we've already read it. Most of us just finished that book about 5 minutes ago. I get why she wrote these, but they were just unnecessary to 99.9% of all readers. This chapter also is one of my least favorite Dursley plotlines, where Vernon has a business deal that falls through because Dobby pops a pudding onto someone's head. And on top of that, this chapter is the chapter where Harry's birthday is forgotten again. So while it still is a decent chapter, it's just agony to get through as a reader, knowing that Harry isn't getting any birthday wishes and we just have to sit through another brutal day with the Dursleys. But one thing this chapter does so well is provide a little bit of darkness, so the next few chapters, when we see the light at the burrow and at the train, those moments become even better. But I do tend to think that this is the worst first chapter in any of the Harry Potter books. But I know some people will fight me for that. So let me know in the comments what you think. Number 5, The Scar. This is in Goblet of Fire, chapter 2. This is a relatively short chapter, but it's a bit dull compared to the riveting beginning we just had with the previous chapter. In this one, Harry awakens from a bad dream. His scar burns, and we recap Harry's previous adventures. And then he finally just writes a letter to his godfather, Sirius. Another recap chapter. Luckily, this was the last one of the recaps, but I believe Rowling just went ahead and assumed that you had read the previous books before you had read 5 to 7, so she just ditches all the recaps from this point on. Sometimes I think this might have been because an editor was telling her that she needed to include the recaps, but they're so boring and just such a waste. And also, it's just a letter writing chapter too. Harry writes to Sirius. It's kind of nice to be back in Harry's head, so this chapter does have some warmth here, but for most of the part of this chapter, it just kind of feels like a transitional chapter between 1 and 3. But again, I still love it and never skip it, unlike my number 1. But before that, let's hit number 4, which is The Rogue Bludger. This is in Chamber of Secrets, chapter 10. In this chapter, a note from Lockhart gets Harry, Ron, and Hermione into the restricted section of the library, and a book on making Polyjuice Potion. At the Quidditch match, a rogue bludger chases Harry, breaking his arm, but not stopping him from getting the snitch. Lockhart's attempt to heal Harry removes the bones from his arms, and Madame Pomfrey begins to heal him, and Dobby pays a visit as Colin Creevey is petrified. You'd think in a chapter like that it would be riveting, But most fans do not like this chapter for one word and one word alone: Quidditch. Now, I love Quidditch, and I have to say I even struggled with this one for one single reason. Why did no adults stop the rogue bludger? It's insane to me. I know you might not be able to tamper with a Quidditch game until it's done, but this is downright dangerous. And everyone is just watching and allowing it to happen. But I think most fans just don't like Quidditch, and this is a very Quidditch-centric chapter. So it can kind of be a bit boring. But I think a lot happens in this one, and to me, it's kind of a bit fun. Number 3, the Death Day Party. This is Chamber of Secrets Chapter 8, and I think this is the most controversial one. In this chapter, Harry is caught dripping mud onto the carpet by Filch, is taken to Filch's office, discovers Filch is not a wizard, and Nearly Headless Nick invites him to his Death Day party, which Harry, Ron, and Hermione attend on Halloween night. Leaving the party, Harry hears voices again, and following the sound with Ron and Hermione, discovers the writing on the wall and a petrified Mrs. Norris. Again, this one is kind of controversial because some people love this chapter. But my only qualm with this was that they just didn't get to the Halloween feast. From someone who loves feasts like that, this was absolutely devastating. So maybe it's just more personal than anything else. Here are Harry, Ron, and Hermione smelling dead and rotting fish while everyone else is enjoying a rip-roaring time upstairs in the Great Hall with amazing and delicious food. Also, Filch is just creepy in this chapter too, so I don't love it all that much. But if this wouldn't crack your worst list, let me know because I feel like this one is weirdly controversial. Number 2, Norbert the Norwegian Ridgeback. This is Philosopher's Stone, Chapter 14. This one is actually a very fun chapter, but it was almost pointless in the whole scheme of things in the series. But in this chapter, Hermione starts studying for finals, the teachers pile on extra homework, Harry, Ron, and Hermione visit Hagrid, discover he has a dragon egg, and later watch it hatch. As the dragon grows, it becomes harder to hide the illegal pet, until Charlie Weasley agrees to have it sent to him in Romania. Norbert is shipped off from the tallest tower, but Harry and Hermione are caught by Filch on their way back to the dorms. First off, studying for finals is just awful and grosses me out. It brings back awful feelings with that. And secondly, I think Rowling mentioned that one of the biggest reasons she wrote this chapter was because she wanted to introduce Charlie Weasley, who she thought at the time would have a bigger role. One of my friends who read it for the first time was so pumped to see Charlie Weasley again in the future, but we barely see him after this. And thirdly, Filch is just in this chapter, and anytime he's in this chapter, it's annoying, and they leave the invisibility cloak at the top of the tower. It's just agonizing more than anything else, to be honest. Not a terrible chapter, but an agonizing one. And number 1, and I think this is at the top of almost everyone's list, is Grawp, which is Order of the Phoenix, Chapter 30. This is the only chapter in the entire series that I will actively skip. I cannot stand it for a simple reason I will explain. But in this one, Harry recalls the dream he had. The Gryffindor team plays Ravenclaw for the final match of the Quidditch season, and Hagrid introduces Harry and Hermione to his half-brother Grawp, making them promise to look after Grawp after he leaves. Gryffindor wins the match and the Quidditch Cup, and Ron is carried triumphantly off the pitch. And I cannot stand this because I love Quidditch. And I love the Quidditch chapters. And Hagrid rips Hermione and Harry away from arguably one of the best matches in the entire Harry Potter era of Quidditch. What I wouldn't give to be able to watch this game. Honestly, it's a sports story that journalists salivate over. Gryffindor loses their best player and captain to an insufferable woman named Umbridge. They have to shuffle players around and have to move their star chaser, Ginny Weasley, to Seeker. And their keeper is absolutely shambles and in his worst form that he's ever been in. And they are playing Ravenclaw. They're supposed to get flattened, but somehow they manage to pull it out, and we are stuck in the forest learning about a giant that really plays such an insignificant role in the books that I don't even know why we're introduced to him, to be honest. And so we just miss the entire game, the game of the century. It's infuriating. I could go on, but this is just my least favorite chapter in the series for that specific reason. But most fans don't like this because of the Grawp idea, and because Hagrid just seems very irresponsible in this whole entire chapter. Just seems like he's throwing something and a big responsibility on the trio, and it's just a little weird, to be honest. And Grawp doesn't really play that significant of a role in the rest of the book as well, so that's why a lot of people hate this chapter so much. But let me know what your least favorite one is. Make sure you like the video and subscribe for more Harry Potter, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Brandon Sanderson, and other nerdy content. And I'll see you in the next one.